Hey, everybody. So today we have my dear friend Jonathan. Now, if you don't know who Jonathan is, I highly recommend you go and Google search him up right now. Jonathan is the CEO and founder of a company called SquareFoot. And I am very excited to have him here with us today to go jump into the story and learn all about SquareFoot and learn about Jonathan's personal journey. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man.
So, Jonathan, let's take a step back, all the way to little Jonathan. Before SquareFoot, before JLL, before New York, before everything like that, where are you from and what was your upbringing like?
Yes, I grew up in Houston. Good upbringing, great family. Love my parents. Neither of them are from Houston originally. Both of them actually grew up here in New York. I have a little brother who also wound up in New York. So my mom likes to say that she and my dad are New Yorkers who live in Texas, and Eric and I are Texans who live in New York. I grew up in Houston. A little brother, 2 years younger than me, like I said, also lives up here now. It was great. I love Houston. I think it's a great place to grow up. I like having space. I like good food, nice people, and especially today as the weather starts to dip, I really like warm weather.
I totally feel it. Today's a freezing day. So when you're like walking down the street, you see people interact with people. How do you compare the people from Houston to New Yorkers?
People down there are nicer. They're not nice here, but they just are nicer down there. It's funny. So, like I said, my parents both grew up here. So as a kid, my brother and I used to come up here to visit our grandparents. And I don't remember this, 'cause I was like 5 at the time, but my mom tells us the story that when we were crossing the street, like went to go see a show on Broadway or something, we were crossing the street, and I made the observation to her that people just walk through you here. And now I'm one of those people that are walking through tourists on the street. So I've come full circle in life.
So we could practically label you a New Yorker now. So welcome to the club.
We're getting close to it, I think.
You know what they say? When you're not somewhere, if you're not in Houston, you have to bring Houston here. So you have to make New York Houston. That's what you need to do.
Yeah. So the doormat at our apartment is it says a picture of Texas or like an outline of Texas, and it says home. So my wife's stuck with that now.
So you're from Houston. You grew up in a beautiful neighborhood. New York was a dream of yours. I'm assuming from a little kid, always to move here. Somewhat.
And that's all that matters.
So you go there. Walk me through your journey of going through college, going through high school, and then going to JLL, and then eventually we'll get to the big crazy idea you had, SquareFoot, and going on the entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah. So I grew up in Houston, right? Atlanta for college at Emory. Moved to DC after school, and I graduated in 2005. Most of my time in DC was working at JLL doing capital markets work. DC was great. Really liked it. Never been a goal of mine to live there for my entire life. Also after college, to your point, I had actually zero interest in living in New York. So story for another day. Mainly because actually, as mentioned, I spent a lot of time when I was a kid here, and that was either in the summer or the winter. So it's either really hot or really cold. And my mom grew up on the Lower East Side. That's where my grandma still lived. This is Lower East Side 30 years ago. It was not like the Lower East Side now. And then when you weren't there, you were in deep Brooklyn where my dad grew up, and you weren't there, you're Broadway and Times Square, which none of Broadway and Times Square is still a place I don't try and spend much time on. And again, 30 years ago, also not. So when I was graduating college, I had no idea why anybody wanted to live in New York. But anyway, after living in DC and also JLL, I spent much time up here for work. But okay, I guess I can see why somebody in their 20s and 30s would want to live here. So when it came time to apply to business school, Columbia was my first choice, and that's what brought me up here originally.
Wow. And I'm assuming you got accepted the first try.
They let me in. That's all that matters.
So, how has your previous work experience, before we get into where the idea from SquareFoot came and why even jump into the entrepreneurship journey, looking back in hindsight, working for a corporate company like JLL, how has that helped you form your company now and run your company?
JLL was great. For me, that was my first job in real estate. So I got to learn a lot about the industry. I had a great boss and mentor who taught me a lot, both about real estate and just like kind of being a young professional. Still is 25 years older than I am, but just kind of how to operate in society. And then, yeah, JLL is a great company, and I was able to see both how great a company works and operates in the real estate space, and also because of the specific role I had doing capital markets, I was able to touch a whole bunch of other service lines. So I got to see what leasing looked like. I got to see what development looked like. Got to see what whatever else looked like. So you got to, for me, it was great. You know, if you work at a smaller shop, you might just do capital markets. They don't do leasing. You might just do leasing, you don't do capital markets. So I didn't do any leasing deals when I was there, but I got to see it. And again, this gets back to my boss having been a really good boss and mentor. For a start, I said, you know, I'm interested in how all this stuff works. And he set me up with his buddies in the other group so I could shadow them for a couple of days at a time when he was out of town. So that was how I got to kind of see, touch, and feel a whole lot of stuff going on. So yeah, it was a very great introduction to the industry.
Right. You know, what you just mentioned over there is such an important thing. And I've actually heard that quite a few times already from a few other people, is that essentially what you did was you showed up, you got a seat at the table. You know, you wanted to learn about the other stuff, so you got connected to other people in other categories, and that way give you exposure to multiple things that you have this wide, vast experience. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So after jail, you know, so you're in JLL, and then one day I'm assuming you woke up and you're like, you know what, I'm getting bored. Let me jump into entrepreneurship because I need some excitement in my life. So, you know, first of all, have you ever even thought of becoming an entrepreneur?
So, I left JLL to go to business school. And then while I was in business school is when we started thinking and working on SquareFoot. So I actually never had to make this like, holy shit, excuse my language, I got to go quit my job and then, you know, jump off a cliff and start this company, which is good. It means I didn't have to have the kind of guts or intestinal fortitude to like say, great, I have this great job and I can just see what the next 3 or 5 or 30 years look like. And I just kind of stay on this path and I'll be something. You know, I started working on SquareFoot while I was in school, and then by the time I graduated, there was enough meat on the bone to say, great, let's give this 6 months and see what we can do. And then that was 7.5 years later. We're here today.
Wow. So where did the idea for SquareFoot come about then?
So yeah, I got a call from a friend of mine who was looking for space for his last company. He'd go online and try and do that. Can't find office space online, so my phone rings off and how the hell do I do this? And after a couple of those conversations, we saw that there was a whole bunch of pain points that businesses have, growing companies have, as it relates to finding, transacting, and occupying real estate. So set out with SquareFoot to fix all those.
Right. So now SquareFoot's 7 years old. Now you raised $29 million to date. You have 50 plus employees. But I want to know about the early days of SquareFoot. You know, the emotional trauma, the days that you wake up and you're like, holy shit, are we going to be in business tomorrow or not? Are we, you know, when your stomach is turning over, you know, in the first few days that you're not sure what you're doing or how you're going to do it. Talk me through some of the early struggles that you went through.
I mean, all those words you said are still true now. It's still stomach turning. You're still worried, not about whether or not we'll be in business tomorrow, but what the business looks like. And, you know, thankfully, we just closed this new round of financing. But now, just like when you're getting started, you have a whole bunch of kind of goals and expectations for yourself, and that's really fun to go try and kind of tackle. My job changes every like 6 to 9 months, right? So I'm CEO from whenever, 8 years ago now, 7 years ago now. But what that looks like at 3 people looks really different now from 60 people. So it's really no less stressful, no less emotionally trying. Just the things that are stressful on every given day are different. When we're first getting started, you're stressed about like product market fit, right? So we have this idea, we'll start talking to landlords, start talking to tenants, start talking to some investors, and seeing, you know, if there's a there. Now I don't worry about product market fit. I worry about kind of scaling, right, which is a very different set of challenges. So the early days, you're like, we have this idea in my parents' attic. is anybody interested other than us in the ad?
So you just mentioned something interesting. Your job changes every 6 to 9 months, and you came from CEO from 3 people to 50 people. As a first-time founder, your own personal development, to become the CEO they are now, obviously has scaled together with the company. So walk me through some of the lessons you learned early on and you continue to learn as you scale, you personally.
Yeah. I have a couple of things, right? So one is communication. Communication looks really different, and we've had to change my communication style and cadence and everything as you go from, if there's 5 people, you're at like one pot of desks and everybody knows everything, both personally, professionally, and, you're talking to your mom or your girlfriend, everybody knows, which is fine. You know everything, right? You don't have to worry about like who's thinking about what and how do you communicate, because everybody's kind of in the same room. You get to 50 people, on the way 15 and 25. If you're 5 people and you're not talking to everybody for 30 minutes a day, you're kind of an asshole. If by the time you're 50 people, if I'm talking to everybody for 30 minutes a month, that's a week of work. So you have to then figure out the best ways, and something that's still a work in progress for us, but you have to figure out the best ways to communicate, what's going through my head, how are we doing, what are our plans, how are we doing against those plans, where do we want to be in 6 months and 6 years. And you can, again, do as I say, not as I do. I think, or I know that you have to kind of over communicate that, because it's all these things I just said are things I think about all day. Like some portion of every day, I'm talking to some people about some of it, but some random broker, some random person on the tech team, some random person on the marketing team who I'm not interacting with on a very frequent basis, how do we make sure that they know everything that I'm thinking? So that's one. And then 2, which is, it sounds so obvious and stupid after the fact, but I guess they say about common sense, it's not that common, is just how important the team is. Not how important a team is, right? That's clearly like important, but the particular people you have on a team, and the difference between an A player and a B player, and knock on wood, we're mostly A players now, but even more kind of night and day, even from an A or B, is what an A or A plus looks like. And we have a handful of A pluses, and those are like very hard to come by, few and far between. And thankfully, we've got a bunch of those now. And the amount and the quality of what you're able to accomplish as an organization increases exponentially as you get those people around.
So communication and team.
Yeah, I guess I could have said that.
Right. So let's take the team, for example, and I will start off, because I think, and I'd love to get your opinion and your viewpoint on this, it seems like they both interconnect with each other. Because in order to have it build a great culture, it comes from communication and team. Essentially, how did you scale the culture at SquareFoot? And from your viewpoint as a CEO of a 50-person plus company, constantly growing, when did you see the culture start? How do you scale it up? How do you build it? How do you go about that process?
So as we grow, you spend progressively less time interviewing more people, right? When we were 20 people, everybody who we were hiring, I spent time with as part of the interview process. We probably hired 15 people in the last 4 months, especially we were going through finance, and I wasn't meeting all of them. That's fine. But the really important thing in the way you're able to scale culture, scale organization, is making sure that the people that I have kind of direct influence on, kind of my leadership team, my executive team, are best in class, right? If I make sure that they're better than me at everything, and they are, that would just be on a relative basis good, but also on an absolute basis very good, then it trickles down one level below. And if they're awesome, then they're going to hire awesome people too. The pretty senior guy who just started, who will be announcing in a few weeks, and he said, he's been with us for about a week now, and he said that, before he started here, he had met a handful of us, and he was pretty impressed. Now that he's met 24 people, he's continually impressed by it. And his comment was, he's like a 30-year executive. His comment was, B players hire C players, and A players hire A players. And we've done a very good job of the A player, of not to pat ourselves too much on the back. I've done a good job of hiring A players around me, and then the A players around me hire A players around them, and hopefully that cascades down in a very beneficial way.
Right, and that's a testament to what you have built. You and your co-founders have built and going about the hiring process, the culture, and everything, which is absolutely incredible. Which makes me think that you guys are one of the early pioneers in the so-called prop tech world. You've been around 7 years before most of the companies that are similar to yours or any other type of prop tech company have been around. As you grow now, 7 years later, what is your moat? You think that you have to? How important is a moat, and what is yours, in a sense, in order to differentiate yourself from all the current competitors that are popping up on a daily basis?
Yeah, prop tech wasn't even a word when we started.
Yeah,
I'm still not sure what it means. So I mean, look, first off, it's a massive industry. Real estate in general, and also even like the part of the world where we try and play with both brokerage services and flexible space offerings. There are a bunch of things that differentiate us and make ourselves unique. But at the end of the day, some of our VCs don't like hearing it, but this isn't a winner-take-all market. If it was, then somebody would be a trillionaire several times. The market's just too big and too fragmented for that to be the case, which is all fine. The things that make us special, a lot of process stuff, and the fact that, more important than that, we've been able to, all under one roof, have a bunch of things that growing companies want, which is access to inventory, transparency, help with the leasing process, that's transaction management, that's our brokers, and then third, a couple of flexible space offerings with Flex by SquareFoot as well as Pivot Desk. And having all of those under one roof, kind of one cohesive service offering, helps our clients win every day in their real estate.
Wow. So, and you mentioned now, you've raised nice amount of money from your VCs this week. It's been announced to raise $16 million, which means $29 million a day. So first of all, how does that make you feel?
Stress.
Nice amount of money to bake.
Yeah, it's enough. It means I have a job tomorrow.
Okay. So what practical advice do you give for someone else going on the fundraising journey? As you know, the fundraising journey can take you away from your team, takes up all your time. It's a long process. What have you found that's good to know?
So one of our board members said this a few years ago. We were going through one of our earlier processes. This gets back to the team comment, which is, he says, I hope you have some good people minding the shop, because you're not going to be at the shop. And it's really true, right? So sales is really strong, CFO really strong COO, really strong VP of people. Our leadership team is strong enough that I can not be in the office for a couple of hours, not be in the office for a couple of days, and not have to worry about, holy shit, something to be on fire when I get back. Which is the point, right? Finance is a very stressful process. It's stressful enough just going through that process, much less also having to think about, holy crap, what's going on back at HQ. So having that team around that can support you, both kind of like emotionally through that journey, but also make sure that the kind of wheels on the bus keep spinning while you're going out to fundraise. And that's important. And two, you have to recognize that you're going to hear no a whole hell of a lot more than you hear yes, and that's fine. That's good. Granted, some people maybe only hear yes, good for them, but that's not how most financing processes work. So you have to go in kind of with a stiff upper lip and be ready for that. And those, they're never fun, but it's part of the process. And if you don't recognize that, it'll make for a much less enjoyable process.
So, two questions about that. We'll start with the first one. How receiving the answer no plenty of times. How did you build up that emotional resilience in order to handle it?
From being a single guy in New York before that.
Which makes me ask, how'd you find your wife?
SquareFoot client Hinge.
So you go back to constantly mentioning team, and it's incredible to hear how much of such a big emphasis you place on your success, on the success of the company and the team. And from my understanding, you make it a point to sit in the middle of the pack. It's not a corner office. It's taking a desk, sitting in the middle of the whole entire pack. Which gives you the ability to interact with everyone over there. Why did you come about that? The reason you wanted. We obviously understand, but where did your origination come
from? I think when I was at JLL, they redid the offices while I was there, and they went from everybody having their own office, not juniors, but like all the senior people, to a kind of open floor plan, and it facilitates and encourages a type of conversation that you're not going to have otherwise. So that's probably where I first saw it. And then going back, I don't know, sometime maybe during business school, I got a tour of what's it called? City Hall. And this was during the Bloomberg administration. And somebody made a point to point out that, here's his office or here's his desk. It's in the middle of everything. And he took that over. I never spent any time in finance, but he spent a bunch of time in earlier career in finance, obviously. And he took that over from the bullpen model after kind of the Wall Street trading floor. And for that's where I saw it. And then I started thinking about it. And I was like, well, that makes a ton of sense. Like, you get to be in the information flow in a way that you can't be if you're kind of cooped up in some office somewhere. So that's kind of the genesis of the idea, and it's played out really well. I like it a lot.
Amazing. Now, so what do you wish that someone would have told you before you began your entrepreneurship journey?
Don't do it. I think actually, in all honesty, right, just knowing a lot more, eyes wide open into what I was getting myself into. I love what I do. I love what we're building. I have a lot of fun. It's really challenging. But I don't think I had any idea what I was getting myself into. That's why when I talk to people, maybe challenge me, hey, I'm going to go start a company. I say, okay, that's what you want. And I say you have to be stupid or passionate. Because if you're passionate about what you're doing, then everything they say about the roller coasters and the building a plane while jumping off a cliff, trying to build a plane on the way down, like all those adages are pretty damn accurate. So that stupid or passionate thing, if you're passionate about what you're doing, then the lows won't be that bad. The highs will be amazing. But if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then the lows are real, real bad. And makes it really hard to go on. You see a lot of people who don't complete the journey because of that, right? So if you're passionate about what you're doing, great. If not, you're stupid if you're just like, oh, it sounds cool to start a startup, because it's not that cool.
I totally. That the emotional struggle you go through, the bad days, it's not worth it. So when you go through those days, what do you do to pick yourself up? When you wake up in the morning, like, wait, SquareFoot, you're going through a hard time, you weren't able to raise money, God forbid, but thank God you did, or something else. What do you do to pick yourself up?
And there's two things. One is, on any given Sunday night when you go to sleep, you know that sometime in the next 5 days, something horrible is going to happen. And also sometime in the next 5 days, something amazing is going to happen. On any given Sunday when you go to sleep, take a guess what really good thing might happen next week, and you can take a guess what really bad thing might happen. But the important thing is recognizing that in any given week, something really good is going to happen, something really bad. And here and kind of in life, expectation setting is really important, right? So if you're expecting that, it doesn't hurt as much. It doesn't completely remove the pain, but knowing that it's part of the process makes it a whole lot more palatable. So the analogy I've started using, it's the difference between boxing and playing tennis. Right? You're boxing, you're expecting to get hit in the face. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes to get hit in the face, but at least when the boxer gets in the ring, he's not surprised when he gets hit in the face. And you contrast that to the tennis player. Tennis player goes on the court. Tennis player is not expecting to get hit in the face. Tennis player gets hit in the face, he's very unhappy. So this is more like boxing. Yeah. You're not going to be able to dodge all the punches. You're not going to be surprised when the punch lands, though. And as you move on, you get better at dodging punches, and you get better at kind of accepting them when they come because they're inevitable.
I'm definitely going to use an analogy. I love it. That's great. Absolutely great. And you hope eventually that the startup will become a tennis field. But it's a dream.
I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah. So, what are some non-obvious habits that have made you
I'm not that smart. Everything I do is obvious.
grow?
Look, it's always asking for help when you need it. It's always asking for feedback. After every board meeting, I text everybody who's in the board meeting and said, how do I do? What can I do better? I'm constantly asking for feedback from the folks around me on the leadership team, and the company more broadly. Look, it's my first time doing all this. And, how am I supposed to be able to get better if nobody's telling me what I'm doing wrong? So it's constantly asking for that feedback and hopefully being able to internalize it and get better over time.
So constantly asking for that feedback is such a great thing, and being able to accept the feedback and act upon it. Which so how important are mentors in your life?
Very. Yeah, I mean, I think and mentors come in all different shapes and sizes, right? So like our COO, in some ways he's a mentor, right? He's about my age, but he's done, before he started here, he did a whole bunch of stuff that I hadn't done, like in startups. So that's been great. On the other side, you have a whole bunch of some of our investors or some of the most senior real estate people in the country. Those guys are great to have around the table. I like to say I like learning from mistakes. I don't mind learning from mistakes and making those mistakes. The only thing better than learning from my mistakes is learning from other people's mistakes. And mentors kind of help you see around those corners that you don't even know about.
Right. 100%. Couldn't agree more. So Jonathan, let's imagine Jonathan, graduating college, coming out of Columbia. He has a whole world in front of him. He could go be a barista in Starbucks, move back to Houston and, play for the Cowboys, or he could start, SquareFoot. What message would you tell your younger self?
That's an interesting question, right? Because when where somebody winds up, I believe, it's all kind of iterative, and there's not this like predestined path. So it's kind of with an eye towards where you want to go in the future, be making those interim steps, but don't get too held up on what each of those steps are. Right. So when I graduated college, I did economic consulting for a couple of years. Exactly the job I wanted. It was great. I liked it. And then I was like, okay, let's go into real estate. Got that job at JLL. Exactly what I wanted at the time. But none of it was like to a view to, okay, when I'm 36, I'll have a startup with 60 people. And you kind of keep learning on that path about what you want to do. And it doesn't matter like what you want to do in 10 years. Because by the way, if you'd ask me, I actually have no idea. When I was 25 and said, what do you want to do 10 years from now? I don't know what I would say. And by the way, if I say what I want to be 10 years from now, I don't know if you ask me 10 years from now if that's the same thing. So I think it's important to be thinking about the future, but focused on the present.
That's 100. So what is one thing you do in order to make sure that your goals, they're constantly in line? Thinking about the future, you can't predict, but putting the process in place, it could be for a company, for personal development, personal growth, and, especially related to the company.
I think it's having that kind of long-term vision of where you want to go, and then chopping it up into smaller pieces and saying, great, this is what we need to do in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, the next year. From that's personal growth perspective or company growth perspective, that North Star doesn't change very much year to year, but the interim steps to get closer to that North Star often do.
Right, 100%. Jonathan, I have learned so much from this interview, a ton. And it goes without saying, any way it could be of service to you or to SquareFoot, never hesitate to reach out. And
office space, send them our way.
For sure. And I cannot wait to see, what happens. Raising, 29 million, 50 plus people, I'm sure we're going to talk in a few months from now. It's going to be hopefully 75 million and 250 people, and on and on.
And your lips to God's ears.
Amen. And I'm for sure, not even a doubt, so many people are going to benefit from hearing about your journey, your story, and taking lessons and applying it to their own life. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, anytime.